In the heart of Gaza City, the Holy Family Church, Gaza's only Roman Catholic parish, has long been a sanctuary for a small, embattled Christian community. On July 17, 2025, that sanctuary was shattered when an Israeli shell struck the church compound, turning a place of refuge into a scene of tragedy. The attack killed and injured civilians, drawing rare condemnation and a public apology from Israel, and igniting outrage from world leaders and the Pope. For Gaza's Christians, the church was more than a building. It was the heart of their community, now left in fear and uncertainty. This incident forces the world to confront the vulnerability of sacred spaces and the immense human cost of war. On that fateful morning, the Holy Family Church in Gaza, one of the city's last remaining sanctuaries for Christians, was struck by an Israeli shell. The blast tore through the church's walls, sending debris and dust into the air and shattering the sense of safety that had drawn so many to its doors. Inside, hundreds of displaced Palestinians had gathered, seeking refuge from the relentless violence outside. Among them were families who had lost their homes, elderly people unable to flee, and children with disabilities who needed special care. The church had become a lifeline, a rare place of hope and protection amid the chaos of war. The explosion was devastating. At least 3 people lost their lives, including the church's beloved janitor, known for his kindness and dedication, and an elderly woman who had been praying for peace. 10 others were wounded, among them the parish priest, who had been comforting frightened families just moments before the blast. Survivors described scenes of chaos and panic. The once calm sanctuary was instantly transformed into a place of terror, with people scrambling over rubble, searching for loved ones, and calling out for help. The sense of loss and fear was overwhelming. The church compound, which had served not only as a place of worship, but also as a center for community outreach, offering food, shelter, and support to those in need, suffered severe structural damage. Buildings that once provided hope and assistance were left in ruins. For Gaza's small but resilient Catholic community, the destruction of the Holy Family Church was more than just the loss of a building. It was a devastating blow to their spiritual and social lifeline, a place where generations had gathered to pray, celebrate, and support one another through hardship. That day, Israeli strikes across Gaza killed at least 94 people. Yet the attack on the Holy Family Church stood out, not only for the lives lost, but for targeting a protected religious site, a place that should have been spared from the violence of war. The incident quickly drew international attention, with news crews arriving at the scene and world leaders expressing shock and condemnation. Israel's highest officials were forced to respond, as questions mounted about the targeting of a site so central to Gaza's Christian minority. The world watched in disbelief as the heart of Gaza's Christian community was left in ruins, a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the fragility of places meant to offer peace. In a rare move, Israel's government swiftly issued a public apology for the church bombing, expressing deep sorrow for the civilian casualties. Prime Minister Netanyahu called the strike a mistake, insisting the church was not intentionally targeted. Israel announced a full investigation, promising transparency and accountability. The apology was shaped by intense international pressure, especially after a direct call from U.S. President Donald Trump. The speed and tone of Israel's response reflected the gravity of the incident and the diplomatic stakes. Many remained skeptical, awaiting the results of the promised inquiry. The world is watching to see if Israel's actions match its words. The attack drew immediate condemnation from Pope Leo XIV, who called for an end to the barbaric war and demanded protection for civilians. Cardinal Pizzaballa, the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, challenged Israel's claim of a mistake, suggesting the church was deliberately targeted. This deepened tensions between the Vatican and Israel over the safety of Christian sites. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, usually an ally of Israel, called the attack unacceptable, signaling a shift in diplomatic patience. The U.S. response was a carefully worded rebuke, with President Trump's displeasure pushing Israel to apologize. The combined outrage from the Vatican, Europe, and the U.S. created a diplomatic storm Israel could not ignore. The bombing of a church sheltering civilians became a global flashpoint. The world demanded answers and accountability. Gaza's Christian community, one of the world's oldest, has roots stretching back nearly 2,000 years. Today it numbers barely 1,000, an echo of a once thriving population that has steadily dwindled over decades of conflict and hardship. Most are Greek Orthodox, with just over 100 Catholics making up a small but resilient minority. Despite their differences, these Christians are united by faith and a shared struggle to survive in a place where their numbers grow smaller each year. The Holy Family Church has long been their anchor, a spiritual and social heart for the community. Here, generations have celebrated baptisms, weddings, and funerals, marking life's milestones together. The church also opened its doors to all faiths, providing vital social services and a sense of belonging in a city often marked by division. Beyond worship, the church ran schools and clinics, offering education and medical care to those in need. Its support programs became a rare source of aid and comfort, especially for families struggling to survive in a besieged city where resources are scarce and hope is often in short supply. Since the war began, the church's role has grown even more critical. It became a sanctuary for hundreds of displaced families, offering shelter, food, and a sense of safety amid chaos. For many, it was the only place left to turn. Decades of hardship, violence, and emigration have left Gaza's Christians increasingly isolated and vulnerable. Many families have left in search of safety and opportunity, leaving behind an aging and shrinking community that clings to its traditions and faith. The recent bombing shattered their last sense of safety, inflicting a deep wound on their identity and hope for the future. The destruction of their church was not just a physical loss, but a blow to their spirit and sense of belonging. For many, the attack is not just on a building, but on their very existence in Gaza. It is a painful reminder of how fragile their presence has become, and how easily their history could be erased. Now the community faces the daunting task of rebuilding both their church and their faith in a peaceful future. Despite the devastation, they gather to pray, to mourn, and to hope, determined to keep their ancient faith alive in the land they have called home for centuries. The bombing of the Holy Family Church is part of a broader pattern. Since 2023, dozens of religious and cultural sites in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. Earlier, an Israeli airstrike hit the Greek Orthodox Church of St. Porphyrius, killing 18 and damaging a centuries-old sanctuary. Mosques, cemeteries, and cultural institutions have also been devastated. A June 2025 UN report found that over half of Gaza's religious and cultural sites have been destroyed or severely damaged. The report accused Israel of crimes against humanity, citing attacks on places where civilians sought refuge. The destruction of schools and cultural infrastructure has led to warnings of scholasticide and cultural erasure. The attack on the Holy Family Church is emblematic of a war that threatens not just lives, but the very heritage of Gaza. The church attack occurred amid a war that, by July 2025, had killed over 58,600 Palestinians, one of the deadliest conflicts for civilians in recent history. Women and children make up more than half the dead, entire families have been wiped out, and countless children orphaned or traumatized. Most of Gaza's 2.3 million residents are displaced, facing severe shortages of food, water, and shelter. The physical landscape is devastated. Neighborhoods, hospitals, schools, and infrastructure lie in ruins. International experts warn that the conditions for dignified life have been eliminated in much of Gaza. Diplomatic efforts for peace have repeatedly failed, with the fate of hostages and ongoing violence blocking progress. The cycle of violence continues, with civilians paying the highest price. The bombing of the church is a stark symbol of Gaza's ongoing suffering. The aftermath of the church bombing is defined by two urgent demands: a credible investigation and renewed calls for peace. The Israeli military's promised inquiry faces intense scrutiny. Will it deliver accountability or serve as damage control? The outcome could reshape trust in Israel's conduct and influence calls for international investigations. Meanwhile, global outrage has injected new urgency into diplomatic efforts for a ceasefire and political solution. World leaders insist there is no military solution, only dialogue can end the suffering. The tragedy at the Holy Family Church amplifies demands for a future where sanctuaries are respected and civilians protected. The path forward depends on a shift from violence to genuine negotiation and reconstruction. The bombing of the Holy Family Church is a moment of reckoning for Israel, Gaza's Christians, and the world. The destruction of this sacred place, a centuries-old sanctuary for Gaza's Christian minority, has sent shockwaves far beyond the city's battered streets. It is a stark reminder that in war, even the most hallowed spaces are not immune to violence. For many, this attack is not just a military incident. It is a profound moral crisis that challenges the conscience of all who witness it. Israel's rare apology and promised investigation are under global scrutiny, testing its commitment to civilian protection. The world is watching closely to see if these words will be matched by meaningful action. International observers, human rights organizations, and faith leaders are demanding transparency and accountability, urging Israel to ensure that such tragedies are never repeated. The credibility of Israel's response will shape not only its reputation, but also the future of civilian safety in conflict zones. For Gaza's Christians, the attack threatens their survival and accelerates the exodus from their ancestral home. Families who have lived here for generations now face an uncertain future, torn between faith and fear. The loss of their church is not just a blow to their spiritual life, but to their sense of belonging and identity. Many are left wondering if there is any place left for them in Gaza, or if they too must join the growing tide of refugees seeking safety elsewhere. The world's outrage demands more than words. It calls for a real push towards ceasefire and peace. Across continents, people are taking to the streets, urging leaders to act decisively and end the bloodshed. The bombing has become a rallying point for those who believe that enough is enough and that the cycle of violence must be broken before more lives are lost. The attack on a church, a universal symbol of sanctuary, underscores the moral imperative to end the violence. When even places of worship are reduced to rubble, it is a sign that humanity itself is at risk. The world must not look away from this tragedy, but instead find the resolve to protect the innocent and uphold the values that bind us together. The story of the Holy Family Church is a microcosm of Gaza's suffering, immense loss, sacred spaces violated, and a population trapped in conflict. Each shattered window and broken altar tells a story of pain, resilience, and hope that refuses to die, even in the darkest of times. What happens next? Investigation, protection, and peace will determine if this moment leads to change or more tragedy. The choices made now will echo for generations, shaping the fate of Gaza's people and the world's response to injustice. The world is watching, and the cost of failure will be measured in more innocent lives lost. In this moment of reckoning, the call for justice, compassion, and peace has never been more urgent.